Richmond fans, welcome back to another video. Hope you're all doing well. Well, it's towards the end of January now, so it's time for us to reveal our January 2025 Round 1 team to take on the Blues. This is a rolling team, so we did do one in November and in December, and there has been a few changes from the December lineup. I wasn't kind of anticipating a couple of them. Some were forced due to some suspensions, others were due to maybe some form or some training or lack of training vision or notes on them. And just a reminder, this best 22 is based purely on what we see from training footage, what we see in training reports, and a little bit of what we maybe want to see as well. So I'm sure there's going to be some varying opinions on who should make the best 22, but that's okay. That's what it's all about. So make sure as well, before we get stuck into it, make sure you leave your best 22 in the comments below for who you would like to see take on the Blues in round 1. And as always, make sure you like and subscribe for more Richmond content as well. It really helps out the channel. But let's have a look at the outs first. So the outs, we're going to roll with 4 changes who are going to be missing out from the November edition side. The first out's Noah Bolter. No surprise there, purely based on the 4-week suspension. So that was a pretty easy one. Still very disappointing about that too, but hopefully Bolter learns from it. But he is a omission. The second out, I'm really not happy about, to be honest. But I've gone with Kane McAuliffe. And this is just simply on the back of, since even just before Christmas, up until as early as 2 days ago, he's still been sort of stuck in the rehab group, just running laps, and hasn't participated in any main group drills or any match sim or anything like that. The club's not said anything about an injury, but I just don't know if there's anything going on there or if it's just management or what the deal is. To be fair, he looks pretty fit running the laps and the sprints he was doing, but I just haven't seen enough for the month of January to sort of justify putting him in the best 22 at this stage. If he gets back into doing the match sim stuff, he probably finds himself back in the 22, to be honest. But yeah, had to put him as an omission for this month. The next out I've gone with is Maurice Rioli Jr. Again, he's probably a player that I would love to see play in round 1, but he's recovering from a bit of a calf injury. Haven't seen him do too much of note in the match simulation stuff. Haven't heard too much of him doing a lot of stuff outside of rehab and running, really. So I'm not sure if he's going to get himself right in time for round 1. I know there's a bit of time until then, but for the purpose of it being a side picked in January, he's going to be on the omission list. And the other out for the January side is James Trezise. Again, just purely based on the fact I haven't really heard or seen much of him in these training reports or training footage from the club in January. So it's kind of hard to feel like to leave him included when there's some other players who have maybe put their hand up. So they are my 4 outs. Jumping across to the 4 inclusions for the January side, I've got Sam Lawler coming back in. I did have him omitted in December because he was still stuck in the rehab group, and my reasoning was he hadn't done any of the main training stuff, which was valid at the time. I stand by that. But his re-inclusion back in January is because he's now doing all of those things he wasn't doing in January. So he's in all of the main training groups. His passing and work rate's been really, really good. And he's really impressed in a lot of the vision. Not only, I suppose, impressing supporters, but I think he's been impressing teammates as well with his laser-like passes. His body seems a bit more defined, a bit more lean, and he seems to be in really, really good shape heading towards round 1. So Sam Lawler absolutely back into the side. The second inclusion is someone I haven't had in the side for the first 2 iterations, but Jacob Hopper makes his way into the starting 22 for my January team. He seems to have really lifted his game, probably from a leadership perspective as well, above all else. But he's doing all of the work on the track. He seems to be in and under at every midfield contest from the footage that we see. Seems to be training really injury-free and unimpeded, which is good to hear as well. And I just think that I feel like he's taking his game to another level. I know there's been a lot of criticism about the acquiring Jacob Hopper in the trade. And I think a lot of it's probably circumstantial. Like, the whole team was pretty average last year. So I don't think it's fair to single a player out like that for a season like 2024. But I feel like that he's really coming into his own and taking on board a newfound role, I guess, as being one of the elder players in the team. So I've got him included in my Jan side. I think he'll be almost a lock for round 1 at this rate. The next inclusion is Jack Ross. Jack Ross Jack Ross has been one of those players that he's been trying on the wing, hasn't worked, but shows good form in the midfield and then kind of finds his way back out of the side. But the times he was in the side last year, I thought he did really, really well. And then he obviously copped injury. And then in 2023, I thought he was doing pretty well too with his stints in the midfield. So a little bit unlucky for 2024 on the injury front. But in a lot of the recent training videos, he has been in the thick of it in pretty much every bit of footage that we've seen. And it's always been in the midfield as well. So I kind of see him as a in the guts midfielder. Might not start in the centre square for the opening bounce, but I think that's where his spot's going to be. And the best thing about Ross is his disposal's really improved. Like, he's actually one of the guys, when delivering the ball inside 50, you kind of feel fairly comfortable with. He does give himself a lot more space and time because he's a smart runner, which I do appreciate as well. So Jack Ross, welcome to the side for January. And the final inclusion, and this one, I don't know whether it will divide people or not, but I've put Camden McIntosh in. I know we want to kind of see all the young kids, right? But we still have to have a balance of experience as well. And McIntosh, from what I'm hearing, might have a bit of a new role for 2025. There's a few whispers around that he might be deployed as a bit more of an inside midfielder. So I'm not putting him in the play on the wing because I think the wing's going to be taken up by two youngsters and a bit of a handing over of the baton type scenario. But I think Camden could potentially be used as, a bit of a hybrid midfielder who can roll back if he wants. He can go back to the wing when the young kids are on the bench. So a bit of a utility player, I guess you would call it. So I've got Camden McIntosh coming back in just to add a little bit more experience to the side. So they are the ins and outs. Heading over now to the lineup so we can see positionally who I've got where. Let's bring that up now. All right, now that brings us to the best 22 lineup so we can see what's happening for the player positions on the ground. A couple of shuffling of the deck chairs has taken place here. Starting from the back line, Ben Miller in at full back. So he was on the bench previously, but with the absence of Noel Bolter, I've got Miller down there. Now, he will also double as a backup ruckman as well. So Nathan Broad would probably then cover the next big forward while Miller rucks, if that was to eventuate on game day. Back pockets, Nathan Broad, Nick Vlaston, no change from December. They are locked and loaded. Half back line is the same as well. Jaden Short, Jacob Blight, and Tom Brown. Tom Brown really starting to light things up at training. Very excited to see what he can bring for 2025. Through the midfield, on the wings, Sam Banks and Hugo Ralphsmith, who was still there from the December team. Timmy Taranto starting in the midfield, which is what we had previously. Half forward line, Sam Lawler is the new inclusion onto the half forward flank with his inclusion for the January team. Liam Fawcett and Ryan Mansell are still taking up the other two spots. Mansell, I think, is going to have a big year. Liam Fawcett, it's a hopeful selection. I'm hearing and seeing good things. I really hope it translates to game day. Forward pocket, Seth Campbell has been elevated from the interchange to the forward pocket as a starting player. Tom Lynch and Jacob Bauer keep their spots as the other forward players. In the ruck, Nankervis, Dion Prestia and Jacob Hopper as the other follower. Now, I am fully aware that my midfield of Prestia, Hopper, and Taranto flies in the face of a previous video I did asking about the best midfield mix. As much as I don't agree with that midfield mix, because I think it might be a little bit one-paced, I just can't see how we will not line up like that, if that makes sense. So I don't necessarily agree with it, but it's how I think we will probably, roll out in round one. But anyway, we'll see how that plays out. And on the bench, we've got Jasper Alger, who was starting on the field. I've just removed him to the bench in place of Sammy Lawler. Jack Ross makes his way to the bench. Camden McIntosh on the bench and Josh Smiley on the bench because I still think he will make a round one debut. And as for the sub, maybe the sub could be someone like a Maurice Rioli Jr., who maybe hasn't set the world on fire at this stage at training, but to have him on for his burst of speed and energy in the second half could be a really good thing to have. So maybe let's lock Rioli Jr. in as the sub for this stage. But there you go. There is my January round one best 22 for 2025. Let us know what you think in the comments below. And if you've got your own best 22, make sure you drop it in the comments and like and subscribe for more. And I'll catch you for the next video. Go Tigers.